on the case.
What's going on, everyone? Design Coma here. Welcome back. And the gameplay you're watching is me playing some team deathmatch on Kremlin. So, I got something I'm going to talk about, and it's a question I get asked often, and sometimes I even get told that I just need to grow up. Alright, so I am, I mentioned this in some of my previous videos. I think it was probably my first video that, I am, what you could consider an old school gamer, I suppose, you could say that. And the reason I say old school is not because I'm like 70 years old and I'm playing Call of Duty, but I think I'd still be playing. Yeah, that is, if Call of Duty's around that long, and if games are still around that long. You never know when something's going to come to an end. But aside from that, I do get oftentimes especially with people I work with, and not too many of them, but some of the younger ones are they're okay with it and everything. But some of the older people that I work with, they're not so much into video games like I am. I mean, I grew up playing video games, and I know some of them did, but they just kind of moved away from it. But I mean, I grew up playing Atari. Yeah, well, mostly Atari. I mean, I started in arcades, to be honest with you, before the Atari hit people's houses. I was in the arcade. I was always in there playing Galaga. That was like my absolute favorite game in the arcade was Galaga or Centipede. I really liked playing Centipede. I wasn't a big fan of Tempest, but I played it once in a while if I needed to fill a gap because I was waiting for somebody to get off of Galaga. I played some Pac-Man, but I didn't play it too often. I wasn't I was a fan of Pac-Man, but I mean, Galaga was my game. That was the game I would spend just countless hours and quarters. Just I dumped so much money into that machine that I don't know. I probably bankrolled. I bankrolled somebody. I had to have bankrolled somebody. But Galaga was the game for me. And I loved playing in the arcade. So when I start talking, a lot of people ask me, especially some coworkers, some older coworkers, we start talking about, career paths, our school, what we did and this and that, and I tell them, oh, I went in, my degree's in game simulation and programming, and they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what I went to school for. Ideally, that's my goal, is to get into that, but this is where I'm at currently, because I mean, I do have to eat, so so yeah, and they're like, well, do you still play? I'm like, oh, of course, I play whenever I can get the chance. Anytime I have the free time to play some games, I'm doing it. So I always get the it's always a statement of, aren't you a little bit too old? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I don't really consider myself too old to be playing games. I mean, and that kind of brought the question up, would you ever be too old to play games? Is there a point where you become that, it's just too old? Like there's some things that, we stop doing as we get older. There's something, like staying up all night long. I don't obviously stay up all night long playing games. I used to, but the older we get, we tend to not be able to hang, and that's kind of what it is. You just can't hang till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning playing games. Now, I could certainly push myself to do it. There's no doubt I can do that, but I will certainly pay the price, obviously, that day. It's going to be a rough day. So, I mean, there are things that we do stop doing as we get older, but there's those things that we love that we tend to not stop doing. In my eyes, you could never be too old to play video games. If you love playing video games, I honestly don't see how you could be considered too old to be playing games. I know in some people's eyes you may be too old, they look at you and it's like, isn't it about time you kind of grew up and kind of got out of this video game phase? You know, and it's like, well, it's not really a phase. It never was a phase for me. You know, I was into games, you know, and, you know, there was that brief period of time where, you know, I wasn't playing games very much. You know, I had started a family, you know, I was raising my kids, you know, they were still really young. So there wasn't really a lot of time for me to work video games into my daily schedule or even a weekly schedule for that matter. You know, but once my kids got a little bit older, and I had met one of my friends, you know, Sacred Havoc. You know, he sends me some video clips sometimes, and you know, once I met him, and he kind of convinced me to get the Xbox 360 at the time. I was still kind of playing around my PlayStation 2. You know, I had a PS2 at the time, but I didn't really play it a whole bunch. You know, and I mean, I still, you know, every now and then I got in there and I played some Resident Evil, you know, and something like that, you know, which is one of my favorite franchises, you know, is Resident Evil. And, you know, I would do that every now and then. But, you know, there was never really any online gameplay. I never played with friends online. So it was really just me. I still had an okay time with it. I had a good time with it, but you know, once he convinced me to get the 360, you know, and the first game that we got, you know, that we played together was, Gra. And, I mean, we played that for forever, you know, and I had talked about it in another video. But, you know, once I did that, I mean, it opened some doors. I mean, it reinvigorated video games for me. And it was so much to the point that eventually I left the company I was working for at the time for 15 years and took a buyout. You know, I worked for one of the automakers. You know, I mentioned that in my previous video. And, you know, I took the buyout, went to school, but, you know, it opened up the door for me to just want to make games and learn how they were made, and you know, really get involved into it and really get into the programming side of things, you know, and the design and the graphics and, you know, all the aspects of, you know, making a game and how it all works. So, you know, it in a way I kind of feel I'm not necessarily offended when people say, oh, you know, isn't it about time you should grow up? Well, maybe a little bit offended, you know, because for me, I mean, I don't consider myself old. I really don't. I'm not going to tell you exactly how old I am, but I will say I'm in my 40s. I'll tell you that much. But, you know, aside from my age, I don't think you could ever be too old, you know, to play video games. You know, unless it gets to the point where your reflexes are just, you know, dead, and it doesn't even mean you have to stop. You know, maybe, you know, you just won't be able to do the multiplayer thing. You know, I mean, I'm almost betting that there is going to be a point in my life where I'm just not going to be able to get in here and play some multiplayer, you know, because my reaction time is just going to be so slow that it may not make any sense for me anymore, you know. But at the same time, you know, there's, you know, single player. I still enjoy playing single player. I don't play it as much as I used to, but I still do enjoy it from time to time. And every now and then, you know, I get in there and I play some games with my kids. You know, they have a Wii, and you know, we like to do this. Me and my daughter thought of this new challenge for Wii Sports for the bowling. We call it couch bowling. We have to lay on the couch, and we can't stand up to roll the ball. You know, we have to lay on the couch and do it that way. It's called couch bowling, and it's a lot of fun. You know, it's definitely a little bit challenging because you don't have, you know, the same movement you do when you're standing up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. And I will catch you guys in the next one, and you'll never be too old to play games.